First and foremost, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Rainy day all day, and of course, that moment when you have to sit in a virtual meeting with the school principal, the sun comes out. So I apologize about that timing, but we'll try to move through this as quickly as we possibly can to get you as much information as you need. Just a couple of reminders, if you're not familiar with Zoom, as you join our room here, if you don't mind, if you muting yourself, that way the rest of our participants don't pick up audio feedback coming from your home or your device. And at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. Before I get into the details of our plan and our presentation, I'd be remiss if I didn't start this evening, really the first time that I've had a live audience with our parents in quite some time, to express my sincere appreciation to our parents. Since this has all come about in March, really, we knew to do this successfully from March through June, up through starting this school year, it was going to require a great deal of patience, flexibility, and creativity by our teachers, our staff, everybody. But I think that most importantly includes you as parents. And you will hear me say tonight multiple times, you will hear me say as school gets started in the fall, and your son or daughters have probably heard me say in the spring, situations that we're in educationally tend to reveal the true character and culture of schools. And I could tell you from March till June and what will happen in the fall, I am just pleased to be a part of, and that's a reflection of you as parents, our outstanding teaching staff, our administration, at the school district level. And I would be remiss if I did not tell you that we appreciate that and know that all of the discussions we have as a leadership team in making decisions, the parent perspective is at the forefront, and we know how challenging this could be on you. And at the end of the day, I think we all want the same things, and that's with our children to learn to the Wayne Highlands level that we've come to know and love, and to do it safely for everybody involved. And I hope that you leave here tonight knowing that you have options for your son or daughter to have that. And that's what my goal and my hope is throughout this. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen at this time. I have a little PowerPoint that will highlight some details here. So if you haven't heard, on July 27th, which was last Monday, our Board of School Directors approved a school reopening health and safety plan for the district. This plan lays out 3 options for parents and students to choose for learning in the fall. 2 which are more of a virtual option, and 1 of which is more of a traditional in-school one. I will talk about all 3 options tonight. I will give you as much information as I possibly can on all 3 of those options to hopefully give you the tools you need to make an informed decision that's most appropriate for your son, daughter, and your families. The other thing that happened on July 27th that's important to note that I want to make sure you're aware of is that our school district has adopted a change of calendar that makes the first school day, regardless of what option you're choosing, to be September 8th. That is a little bit changed from previous years. It's a little bit later than before, but our first student day, regardless of which option you choose, is September 8th. In this health and safety plan, there were many details of what the health and safety protocols will be for in-school traditional learning. And when I go over that option, I will talk about those in greater detail. But here's a little infographic that you may have seen on our social media accounts and shared on our website that talk about the 3 options. There's a traditional learning option, a Wayne Highlands Live, and a Wayne Highlands virtual campus. For the logistics of this evening, I want to start by talking about option 3 and then working our way to option 1. Is that option 1 has more health and safety protocols because that's for the students that would be with us in person as opposed to being home. So our option 3 is what we call our Wayne Highlands virtual campus. This option actually is not new to Wayne Highlands. This has been with us for a couple school years now. Basically, it's almost a separate school within our school district in a way of looking at it. Students have to register for this option. the students who participate in this option, they do participate in a curriculum that's aligned to our Wayne Highlands School District Program of Studies and the PA Common Core standards. It's a virtual setting that's provided through our VLN partners. It's not necessarily our teachers. So, you know, if a student is used to having Ms. Kwiatkowski at Wayne Highlands Middle School, Ms. Kwiatkowski is not a Wayne Highlands virtual campus instructor. That is provided by our partners, but it is a research-based program that we know that the curriculum and instruction are solid with. We have a Wayne Highlands School District local liaison that is your support if you signed up for this option. His name is Mr. Roos. I believe he's on the Zoom. And at the end, if parents have specific questions to that, Mr. Roos may even be able to speak to some of them better than I could. With this option and all three of the options, you do remain a Hornet. You remain one of our Wayne Highlands students, which is very important, and we feel very strongly about. You are our student, so we still care for you. Your education is still very important to us, or your son or daughter's education is still very important to us. But it is an option. It's an option that's been out there for quite some time. And to learn more about it, you can talk to me privately at the end. Contact us in the office. Mr. Roos's contact information is on our school website if you'd like to talk to him. But this is the one option that would require you to register your son or daughter, which you can do in the main office. The other options, you would fill out an online declaration, which I will talk about in a little bit. But that is our third option. That is one of the three options, is the virtual campus. Our option two, and this is a new one that probably is the one that will be not as familiar to our students or our parents, and that's Wayne Highlands Live. This is newly adopted to accommodate for the circumstances and for parents who feel strongly that they want to keep their children home for safety reasons, that they can participate in our school in a virtual aspect. And let me talk to you a little bit about what that would look like. If you chose for your son or daughter a synchronous option, or we can even call it an asynchronous option, they would use their devices at home to participate in our Wayne Highlands Middle School teachers' lessons. So hypothetically, in this situation, a teacher would be recording themselves and or broadcasting themselves to the students who are at home synchronously and to students in a classroom in front of them. And the students would be able to follow along on the lesson from their device. They'd have opportunities to ask questions when it's an appropriate time to do that. They'd have opportunities to participate in in-class discussions when it's doing that, when it's appropriate. And any resources that the teacher's using in class with the students would then be posted on our Google Classroom format that your son or daughter can access those as well. So if you're doing a synchronous option as a student, you would be given a Zoom link, similar to the Zoom we're kind of in now. It'd be a private Zoom link. You would have an option of participating live, meaning that at the time that that teacher's instructing, you could be there live. Or if for logistical reasons the student can't participate or follow along with it during live, they can watch the recording of that lesson and participate on their own time at a time that might be more convenient. Again, your son or daughter would be at home. They would be in front of a device and participating with our Wayne Highlands Middle School teachers. So with the virtual campus I talked about, you wouldn't have our specific middle school teachers that you have known to come and love. You would in this instance that you are still with them in a virtual format. So the curriculum's identical to what you'd have in our school. The instruction is pretty much identical. It's similar, except you're over a device. You have the opportunity to interact with Wayne Highlands teachers and students. Again, just like the virtual campus, you still remain a Hornet. You remain a Wayne Highlands student. I think it's important to note with this option too, in option 3, which was the virtual campus, and the Wayne Highlands Live, they both offer this, but in my opinion, I believe the Wayne Highlands Live gives a little bit is a little bit more easy with this, and that is, if at a point down the road, you choose that you would like your son or daughter to return to our school physically and participate at our physical campus in school, the transition would be a little bit more easier because they would be on classroom rosters. They would have interacted with our teachers and come to have known their teachers and their peers. I will talk about how you declare what option you would like in a little bit. But when you declare that, you're making that declaration for a marking period. But with this Wayne Highlands Live, I do feel that after marking period 1, if you feel the situation changed where you're more comfortable with your son or daughter coming to school physically, this transition may be a little bit more smoother than other options. And I think that's important to note. I also want to make sure parents who aren't entertaining options 2 or 3, the virtual campus or the live one, know that these lessons will be taking part in classrooms that your son or daughter are in, but they will not be on video. They will not be recorded in that fashion. It would be mainly the teacher's part of the instruction that would be part of that. And again, I will talk a little bit more about the declaration, but you will be an opportunity tomorrow to choose out of the 3 options the district is providing to choose to declare that. And that will give us our idea of where our numbers are and who's going where and what options students have chose. And again, that will be sent out tomorrow. I also want to point out with Wayne Highlands Live, you do not need to register. You only need to declare through that online survey. And we, at that point, will accommodate for that and be in touch with what it will look like, what your son or daughter's schedule will look like, what teachers they will have, and then the teachers can begin to share Zoom links and Google Classroom information. And the first option, option 1, is traditional in-school learning. The plan that the school board adopted includes these 3 options, but it includes for the traditional in-school learning for your son or daughter to report following a normal school schedule, meaning, from a standard 8 to 3 o'clock day. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. This is the option that I need to go into a little bit more deeper because we've had to make some significant changes to our schedule to do this safely. And the students are physically here, so we have a bigger safety protocols and plans that we will be adhering to for our students that are physically here. So I will talk about this a little bit more at length, but know that if you're choosing option 1, everything that we have explored in terms of doing this and doing it safely is exactly that. We've been doing it with making sure it's safe and that it's meeting high academic expectations. And I believe that if you choose option 1 and or option 2 or 3, you will feel that. And if you have concerns about that, obviously, talking down the road, we could talk about it a little bit more privately. But so let's talk a little bit about health and safety. These are general health and safety plans that are approved by the school board that are important for you to know. And these are, again, in guidance with health officials, health experts, CDC guidelines, PDE guidelines. This is where this comes from. It wasn't, willy-nilly thrown together. Health screening your student or your son or daughter at home is a part of our plan. Wayne Memorial Health will be providing resources on how you could do that and guiding you make decisions on, your son or daughter's symptoms if there ever are any, screening for them and making decisions that keep your son or daughter home if necessary. 6-foot distance between students as much as possible and between staff members and students as much as possible is a very important guideline that you're going to hear discussed a lot tonight. One of the reasons we've decided on the schedule plan that we did that you'll hear about in a minute is it's most likely for us to be able to get 6-foot distance between students more frequently. And when I go over the details of the schedule, I think that will be important. Why is the 6-foot distance important? Well, because guidelines say anytime students are within 6 feet of each other or of really any human, they need to be masked, and so does the other adult or student, or have a face covering. And again, you'll see this. I will physically show you a classroom. when there is 6-foot distance, it doesn't mean we're just going to say, okay, mask off. It will be carefully developed through us with protocols with our teachers that we know that for a certain period of time, the students will have 6-foot distance. It's a learning environment that will allow that, and that the teacher will have 6-foot distance as well. And that's been a key to what we've been planning, is mapping out 6 feet physically between desks and where the students sit to make sure that we have that in circumstances. I will tell you now, and you'll see when I go through what our schedule looks like, I can't sit here and guarantee you that your son or daughter will come here every day, and for a majority of the day, they will be 6 feet apart of peers. I do feel comfortable telling you that we will be able to meet that for certain points during the day. And again, a lot of it will dictate based off our capacity of how many students do physically come to us in the fall and how many don't. But I think that our plan calls that we will have options for that. And I will get into more details with that in a minute. You know, obviously the plan calls for mask and face coverings. And I just want to say real quickly about this, as I kind of already highlighted. Mask and face coverings are going to be very important for this school year for students who come in person. Regardless of your personal opinion, your personal philosophies, my personal opinion or my personal philosophy, our guidance and requirements call that when students are within 6 feet, which could be for good portions of the day, that they must have mask and face coverings on. So if you do have strong personal feelings, or your son or daughter do as well, that they are not comfortable, nor will they or do they want to do that, I would ask you to be proactive to really explore option 2, which is the Wayne Highlands Live. From the get-go, I know I speak on behalf of Mr. Burns that the last thing, and nor does our school community or any parent, regardless of their belief, want a situation that we are spending time having an argument or a disagreement with a parent or a student over wearing a face covering or mask. If your belief on that is that strong, I would tell you to be proactive, that you don't want to be in that situation. I know you don't either. You know, we're not going to start talking about discipline for those things. If that was to occur, I know Mr. Burns or I would have to isolate that student because they're breaking the protocol and the safety recommendations. And we would call you at that point and implore you to look into option 2 or 3. But again, it's part of the plan. It's probably part of every school plan that opens up in person. And regardless of your beliefs or feelings on that, I'm going to be upfront and honest with you that it is a big part of what we will do. And we will be very cognizant of making sure students get breaks for this when we can do it safely. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as possible. Our plan also calls for us to utilize outdoor space a little bit more often. I'll talk about lunches and us being able to use outdoor space for lunches at times. Creativity by teachers to do a little bit more outdoor activities and taking students outdoors safely. But I want you to know that when we're talking about those things and we're doing those things, we are in close consultation with our school police officer. In fact, we met today to discuss it. We feel pretty comfortable that there will be things that we will be able to do outside that will allow us to do it safely, not just from a health standpoint, but a physical safety standpoint of keeping your son or daughter safe while they're here. Mr. Burns and I have been working on making sure our hallways are all one way. We will have signage for that so our students know that there will not be cross traffic. When you see our schedule that I'll go over in a minute, there will not be a lot of hallway traffic or movement, but when there is, we will have one-way hallways. We're going to have much signage with hygiene protocols, specifically washing hands. We talked about 6-foot distance. So it's impossible for someone to eat their food or drink their drink without a mask on. They would have to take their mask off. And we have mapped out our lunches to this point that we will have 6-foot distance from the students, which will allow them to eat, take their mask off and eat. But we will utilize our gym and our cafeteria. And depending on numbers, we may need to use a third space such as the LGI. But again, we're doing that to make sure we have the six-foot rule and students can eat safely without worrying about being exposed to a peer or an adult because of that 6-foot distance. And I will get more details into the lunch in general. And then Dismissal from classrooms, anytime students leave classrooms, it will be very strategically planned. And that's again part of the district plan, that students closest to the door would leave first. Students farthest away from the door would leave last. And again, it's just a general plan to make sure that we're keeping it safe and limiting student to student exposure or student to staff exposure. And I will talk a little bit more about hallway traffic and going to certain places when we talk about lunches, as that's a big part of it. Some other details and recommendations that formed our plan and our schedule for students returning for in-person learning. PDE put out guidance that said if you have the capabilities of keeping students in cohorts in their specific groups and keeping them generally scheduled to one class while the teachers rotate and move, you should look into that option. And that was a big thing that we really that we focused on for our schedule that I'll talk about. So our plan for students who return for in-person learning is we are in the process of creating cohorts. So your son or daughter would be assigned to a classroom / homeroom. That's really their physical location, and they would have an assigned seat in that classroom. And that's really their main station and hub for the day. My hope is that the desk in the other desk in the classrooms will be close to 6 feet apart from the others, if not fully 6 feet apart. I hope that, I can't tell you a full commitment to that because I know what our capacity is in classrooms. And if 100% of our students choose option one, there might be some classrooms at times that the distance might be closer to 5 feet as opposed to 6. If a certain percentage of students choose option 2 and or 3, we have a little bit more capacity to be able to get closer to 6 feet at certain spots. But again, they're going to be assigned, they're going to be assigned to a classroom. So we have created basically 7 homerooms per grade because it fits well with what we can do in terms of a schedule. And we physically picked 7 classrooms based off of their size. We've removed all furniture from there that isn't necessary, bookshelves, general carts, teachers' desks that we may not need in there. And we maximized how many desks we can get in each classroom with a 6-foot distance. We also took into account ventilation. So a majority or a lot of the 21 classrooms have windows that can allow for fresh air ventilation. If they do not, I will tell you that we are fortunate at our building that our HVAC system allows for fresh air ventilation to come in. So yes, there are some rooms that may be a part of this that don't have windows, but we will be increasing the percentage of fresh air that comes into those rooms to equate to the necessary fresh air ventilation that we want. And we also took into account physical location. As you can imagine, our teachers will be the ones traveling, and to maximize or to minimize how far they have to travel, which maximizes instructional time, we wanted our grade levels classrooms to be somewhat close together so our teachers aren't traveling from one end of the building to the other in a short period of time with a cart full of materials. To accomplish that and to do it, we kept the physical location of the classrooms together. Again, the 6 feet distance between desks is there as much as it possibly can be. Once you make your declarations, I will know more as to how many rooms will have 6 feet distance, or if all of them have them, or some may not. Just know that the 6 feet distance will allow for small periods of time where there's mass breaks. So if a teacher has students working independently at their desk and that teacher is at their desk area and not moving throughout the classroom, and the students are mainly stationary at that time, the teacher may say to the students, okay, we're at our distance. I'm going to be behind the desk. You guys are working on your worksheet or you're working on your assignment quietly or independently. We can take a mass break for now. If someone gets up to move within the classroom or needs to go to the lavatory or something, then they would need to put their mask back on appropriately. And we would manage the mass breaks like that. In classrooms where it may be closer to 5 feet, we will still be able to do mass breaks. We just might need to be able to be a little bit more creative in doing them, meaning that, there might be a situation where there's 2 adults in a room. Maybe one stays in a classroom with half of them. and the other group maybe goes to a different location for a period of time to work on something else curricularly, again, safely. At that point, then, we might have a little bit more room for 6 feet and have mass breaks. And then again, the mass breaks would come at lunch because there will be a guaranteed 6 feet then, and they need to have their mask off to eat. Again, so this is a different plan. It's a very different schedule for us compared to what our kids are used to. And I see a lot of our students are here, and I'm glad they're here. And if they aren't, I would ask you to tell your son or daughter to watch this because this affects them as much as anybody. We will not be using lockers. That is part of our safety plan, that students will be permitted to bring their book bags in. They will take them to their stations where their classrooms are and their assigned desk, and they will be able to house them in that area. And, in seasons where they have winters or jackets or overcoats, they can keep those in that area as well. But to start the school year, we will not have locker use. To accomplish this, we have developed a block schedule. And I will show you a sample block schedule. What's most important for you to know is, although the schedule looks different for kids compared to what we've had in past years, the instructional time they receive in each subject is almost exactly the same to what they would get under normal circumstances. It's just how they're getting them. As opposed to sitting for 7 periods a day for 40-minute classes and the rotation happening every 40 to 41 minutes, they would now be blocks where there's more closer to 70 minutes of time. And it would be over a 2-day cycle. So your son or daughter would have social studies, one 70-minute block over the 2-day cycle. Same with science. ELA, as we always have had, ELA has always had a double block. So ELA would have 2 of those 70-minute blocks in a 2-day cycle. And then in math, only in 6th grade math, our 6th grade math students have always gotten a double block. They will still have that now. It will just be in a 70-minute block over 2 days. Excuse me. We also, in this plan, have been able to schedule the special area classes, and these special area classes would rotate each marking period. So when the science teacher rotates in, then the math teacher, and then a social studies teacher. Each grade level will have 2 special area classes that rotate in. Right now, as it's currently scheduled, 6th grade would start the year with computer science and art. 7th grade would start with physical education and general music. And 8th grade would start with library science and family consumer science. And again, they are built into the rotation with the regular core subjects, and they would again be one 70-minute block over 2 days. I mentioned this before. It's nearly the same academic times and courses as a normal schedule. It just looks different. If I'm being completely truthful with you, the meeting the instructional minutes or the students getting the instructional time that we want them to get in each of those subjects is not sacrificed here. It's not a problem in this situation. The challenge is that the students are mainly stationary. I think as a middle school student, I can't blame them. They do like to rotate their classes and interact in the hallways. Unfortunately, with our safety protocols and what we want to do to maintain safety, that will not happen. They will be mainly stationary in their classrooms. Now, as anyone who has students in other grade levels, I know our 6th grade parents are new here, but I'm sure at Lakeside you felt the same way. Our teachers are very engaging. I don't worry that our students would be bored or, find it to be a tough thing to sit there, because the academic part of it would be engaging, and our teachers do a good job of making that fun, and they would do the same in terms of making it engaging and fun over that block. Here is a sample schedule. This is an 8th grader's schedule. So I have a homeroom time of 7:30 to 8:45. That's not really just a homeroom time. That's just, we're going to have staggered arrivals, which I'll talk about arrivals in a couple minutes. But, we might have some kids who come at 7:30, some come at 8:45. But really, our instructional block would start at around 8:50. And you can see there's a 70-minute block. So if this was a typical week, on Monday, this student would have Miss Kowalczyk would come into the room, 216.
Thank you, there.
ELA. Mrs. Lasko would then come in 75 minutes later and do math. That student would then have lunch. They'd go back to room 216. Mrs. Fletterbach would come in for library science. And then the day would end on Mr. Russick and we would have a staggered dismissal for students from those rooms, directly from those rooms, where they don't go to their lockers, they take their belongings and leave, based off a plan we would have that I will revisit again. So then day 2 of that cycle, which would then be Tuesday, again, the student starts with Ms. Kowalczyk. They would have tech ed with Mr. Griffiths and Mr. Piasecki, who would be more like co-teachers for that. One of the advantages for some of these classes that allow to have the 2 teachers there is that they will be able to, at times, safely kind of split those groups. So there may be days where Mr. Griffith says to that class, okay, I'm going to stay in with 10 of you, and we're going to do instructional stuff within this classroom. And Mr. Piasecki may safely, with mask on, take the other 10 kids to more of a lab area where they're spaced 6 feet apart, and they're working on more technology stuff in a lab type setting that would then be disinfected after that group leaves to make sure there's no, cross-contamination with another group that comes in. But again, in this schedule, you'd see again, block 3, they would have family consumer science with Ms. Fossauer and Mrs. Zabrowski, and then they would have their social studies on block 4. This again is a sample of an 8th grader's schedule, just one sample, but I wanted to show it to you because it gives you an idea of the 2-day system and the block schedule. The students only really have 4 classes a day for longer periods of time. That is a shift from normal. I understand that the 2-day block system can be a little confusing. Like some of you may be thinking and going, how is my son or daughter going to be able to keep track that they're going to have Miss Kowalczyk, on block 1 on Monday, but then Miss Lasko block 2 on Monday, but block 2 on Tuesday, they're going to have Mr. Griffiths. The nice thing about this in terms of the students being scheduled by cohort and in individual classrooms is they don't really need to know where they're going. They just know that the teachers are going to come to them. And eventually they'll get into the routine of who's coming when. But this is generally what a sample schedule can look like. The only one slight change to this is in 7th grade, our 7th graders, because of how special area classes are scheduled and work, over the 2-day cycle would have one period that is a study hall. And again, that will shift into other grades as we get into other marking periods. But generally 7th grade is where a study hall block may come in. But again, it's just one block over the 2 days. We did set up a couple of our classrooms with 6-foot distance, and I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like. This is one of our larger classrooms physically. Mr. Burns, Mr. Blaskowitz was a help with this, myself, Mr. Yerish. We were measuring 6 feet apart and maximized our distance. We removed the furniture. And this is kind of a sample of what things could look like where we do get 6 feet. So if you can envision this classroom right now, say it's Mr. Russick teaching, and Mr. Russick can safely go over to his desk and he gives an independent assignment where students are working independently and remaining at their desk. Mr. Russick may declare, okay, for the next 10 minutes, we can take a brief mass break while the students maintain in their seats. But you need to know that we're going to be very careful with that, and that anytime Mr. Russick may then need to move, the mass break would need to end, meaning Mr. Russick might need to go talk to a student privately, or maybe a student has to go to the lab or needs to go to the lab. Students would need to remask because the 6 feet may not be accomplished when that happens. But again, I wanted to give you an idea of what a classroom could physically look like when it is 6 feet apart. And again, that would be, I believe that classroom right there, off the top of my head, I believe we could fit 23 desks 6 feet apart. That would be if we assigned all 23 students to that classroom. There's a chance we may need to have, one more than that, say 24. That would then make some distances closer to 5 feet when we spread it out. There's also a chance that our capacity gets a little bit better because some other students have explored virtual options that we might not need 23 desks in there. Maybe now we only need 20, which will give our teachers and myself a little bit more flexibility to move desks to different areas while still maintaining the 6 feet. Again, with this plan and what it looks like at the middle school, there's not really a need for your son or daughter to come in on day 1 and receive, hey, here's your individual schedule. Really, the most important thing for your son or daughter to know is what room they're assigned to. And I'm in the process of building that with Mrs. Murray in consultation with our teachers to build that. A big consideration with that is our math classes, because it is the one subject that varies, that students are in different math classes by grade level. So that's taken into consideration. We're building those classrooms. Capacity of what the physical classrooms can hold is also taken into consideration. But unlike typical school years where your son or daughter comes in on day one and we give them their schedule and homeroom and it's very individualized to them, they're just going to be assigned a room. So if they're assigned room 112, room 112's schedule over the 2-day cycle is the same. We'll post it in the classroom. We'll give them a copy of it so they know, but really it's just their classroom. And over that cycle, they will get their class, their teachers will come in and get the instruction requirements that are needed at that point. Again, in these classrooms, it will be assigned desk and areas in that classroom. You know, if by chance something happens where a student's desk needs to be moved, or a student came in contact with another desk, our teachers are going to be equipped with disinfecting to make sure that we disinfect at any time that's needed. Obviously, as part of the district safety plan, there's a deep cleaning and a disinfecting process that will happen every day. Areas like the lunchroom and the gym where we'll be eating, I will get into this in more detail in a minute, they will be disinfected. But again, generally your son or daughter, when they come for the fall, they will have their own area, their own desk, an area that is theirs that other students won't be accessing. And again, that will help us avoid cross-contamination. I would love to be able to tell our parents right now, hey, here's our list of who's in what classroom. I can't do that right now, and I hope you know why and can understand this, is that I want to wait a little bit closer to the school year, and that, again, once I know when parents declare for option 2, which is Wayne Highlands Live, or option 3, the virtual campus, I'm going to have to shuffle things around to rebalance our homerooms and classrooms, taking into consideration math classes and capacity of those rooms. So you can expect that at some point later this month, when we have a better idea of our numbers, who's actually coming to us in the fall and who may be doing virtual options, that we will be able to say to you, okay, Johnny is going to be assigned to room 112. And then Johnny knows that that is his classroom, that's his main hub, and Johnny will have a specific desk in that classroom that is his. I want to talk about arrival, whether a student comes on a bus or a parent drop-off. Some of this will look similar to what it does in normal circumstances. Much of it will look very different. Parent drop-off will still occur at the covered stairs in the gym entrance. Our people who are our staff members who will be supervising that will probably be even more diligent than ever, that it's, you know, your son or daughter doesn't get out till they actually reach the covered stairs entrance, and we can make sure that there's a distance between students who get out of the first car versus who get out of the second car, and it's one at a time, and it's a little bit more of a specific process to make sure that there's safety there. We would ask that at that point, when they're leaving their cars, when students are leaving their cars, that they put their mask on appropriately, that when they travel in through our hallways, which will be one way, that their masks are on as well. What's most likely to happen is we will get this to students prior to the start of the school year. They will be assigned an area that they're to report to. If they arrive between 7:30 and 8, Mr. Burns and I will have specific areas that students will report to based off their cohort. So if they're in room 112 would be assigned an area that they kind of go to. As a cohort, we will try to maximize our space as closely as we can. We can't really predict how many students will arrive between 7:30 and 8. So, you know, there is the possibility, strong possibility, that if there's a fair amount of students who come at that point, that in those areas, there may not be 6-foot distance, so they would need to keep their mask on at that time. And that's what it would look like. But again, we will assign those specific areas and let students know those, again, as we get closer. And again, it's based off those cohorts and homeroom assignments, because it reduces you know, cross-contamination of students and exposure to students from different cohorts. And again, it still should be safe because they're going to be following the mask protocols or the 6-foot distance when needed. Knowing that some of those areas may be the gym or cafeteria, which are our two main eating areas for lunch, they will be disinfected by our custodial staff after students go to their actual classroom. So you don't have to worry about that. That has not been deeply cleaned before the students come back for lunch. Our grab-and-go breakfast stations that we ran last year will still run this year, and students will be able to eat those at their stations in their classroom. Our teachers are going to have to be very cognizant of the 6-foot part of that, and our students will have to be very cognizant of it well, that if you're eating in a classroom, that it's at a time and a moment that we know there's definitely 6-foot distance, just like we have in our cafeteria. Speaking of lunches, the two lunch locations, as I've said, will be the gym and the cafeteria. Well, why do we have two lunch locations? I think you know this at this point. The lunch is the one area where we have to get 6 feet apart because they're eating. And then they can't eat with a mask on, so they will have their mask off to eat. So to get that 6-foot distance, we had to use the gym this year. The tables in the gym would be long tables that would have students on each end that would be 6 feet apart. So it'd be 2 students at a table. Those tables would then be 6 or more feet apart from other tables. And the students would be assigned those seats based off their cohorts or their homerooms that they are assigned. So they're still generally around the same population. Because of the block schedule, we would only do 2 lunches, which is different from what we typically do, which is 3. It shouldn't be a problem. We still think mainly our 2 areas of the cafeteria and the gym would be our main areas. We've mapped out the 6-foot assigned seats and where we're at. You know, Mr. Burns and I are approximately feeling very comfortably that our cafeteria calls would for about 50 to 55 students sitting 6 feet apart, and our gym would allow for roughly around 140 to 150, which should be enough space. Again, after each lunch, all those seating areas would be completely disinfected. So if your son eats A lunch, they don't need to worry about, or your son eats B lunch, they don't need to worry about that it wasn't cleaned after the student who sat there in A lunch. It would be deeply cleaned and disinfected. Because there's 2 lunches, it would be split up based off those classrooms that students are assigned. Our A lunch, which would be our first lunch, would have 6th grade and half of 7th in it, and our B lunch would be 8th grade and the other half of 7th with it. The 6 feet we've talked about. We will have signage that will dictate the flow of traffic for those spaces. One-way flow of traffic for those spaces, 6 feet from where students are eating. Protocols for students when they go to get their lunch or they are disposing of their lunch at times that we tell them they could. They are masked at those times. We are going to be able, if weather cooperates, we are going to have a rotation where half of our students on good weather days will be able to go outside. And our custodial staff, who's been outstanding, Mr. Yarish and his guys have been incredible in terms of making this work for us, that Mr. Burns and I come in and say, hey, good weather day, half the tables can be moved outside. And those students that are assigned those half of tables will be able to eat outside that day if weather is cooperating for that half hour. Then the next nice weather day, the other half would be able to go out, and we would utilize what would be our back access road, close it off, secure it, in consultation with our school police officer, obviously. But I think it would be something for the students that would be nice for them to be able to do and do it safely. One of the things, the lunches are the one part of the day where we will have a little bit more travel in our hallways. And without getting into too many of the details of what that could look like, is Mr. Burns and I will develop a plan that would strategically dismiss students from classes to lunches staggered based off their physical location. So, for example, if you're familiar with our building, Mrs. Deal and Mrs. Kwiatkowski's rooms are right next to each other. We would not want those 2 rooms dismissing to go to lunch at the exact same time. We would do it spread apart and staggered to reduce how many kids go into the hallway in a safe manner. And again, they would travel with their mask on. We will have markings in the hallway that indicate arrows for the direction of the one-way hallways, but they will also be spaced 6 feet apart. So the students have a visual of what 6 feet looks like, and that we want them to have that as they're traveling through the hallway. Dismissal back to the classrooms would work the same way. We would do it based off of the physical location of the classroom, so it's not a huge congregation of people going at once. Dismissal at the end of the school day, that's going to happen straight from classrooms. We will have a system that comes up that will announce certain groups of students dismissing at certain times, meaning that when bus 152 arrives, Mr. Burns or I will probably announce at that point, bus 152 students can gather their belongings and dismiss to the bus lane using the exit in the bus lane. However, the teachers will then manage that how the students leave the classroom. The ones closer to the door go first, one at a time, safely, obviously mask on, and they would dismiss to their buses at that point. In terms of parent pickup, Mr. Burns and I are working through the plan in terms of what this could look like to reduce the flow of students that go up to that pickup lane in a fast manner. But it will be strategic, it will be careful, and we will make sure that it is done safely to dismiss students who are parent pickup, which again occurs at the top of our covered stairs. Some miscellaneous information. So you might be asking yourself, and it's a very valid question, so lunches are going to be in the gyms. How is physical education going to occur? That's a very valid question. I've been in contact with our physical education teachers, and they are creatively coming up with some plans to do a combination of in-class activities that may include even health activities, and also outdoor options when possible. We will not have any changing for phys ed classes or phys ed uniforms. That leads me into my next point, and I will release more details as to this as we get closer, but Mr. Burns and I are very cognizant of the restrictions we're putting on students, and we get it. This will be a challenge for students. But as a little caveat, and to accommodate for phys ed classes, we will be permitting students to wear appropriately linked shorts in the fall to start the school year. And again, that's to accommodate for phys ed classes. And truthfully, to give our students a little boost to say, hey, you know, it might be a little bit warmer. You're not going to be rotating classes or maybe not even socializing as much as you did. I know our students really enjoy when they have that capability of doing that. It will still be within the parameters of our dress code that it needs to be appropriate length, but it will be a caveat for that, which again will allow kids not needing to change if they want to wear shorts to phys ed class. On days that they have phys ed, obviously it would be best if they wear sneakers. I know Mr. Gillow and Ms. McDermott will go over that as things get closer. As we get closer to the end of the month, you can also expect to hear from our school on very specific supplies list. Our supplies list this year will be unique and different for a couple of reasons. We're not going to have the capabilities of Johnny doesn't have a pencil case, let's hand him one. We want to avoid that. Our teachers are going to collaborate over the next few weeks and come up with very specific things that will be important for you to get. But I do have some general things right now that I feel pretty comfortable telling you that if your son or daughter's coming here physically for the fall, that I would consider start thinking about looking into. A 3 to 4 inch binder. And the reason why, and only one, not one per subject, just one per student, is our teachers early on in the year can use that binder as a place where they can put the students' resources, meaning if they know the following worksheets will be used over the next 2 weeks, they can pre-populate those in the binders. The kids don't need to worry about getting that worksheet from a teacher during the class. They don't need to worry about losing it. It's in the binder. And the binder would be the main hub of their loose leaf papers and resources, and something that could travel a little bit more easily with them home if homework's coming out of the binder. or maybe they could have a folder, which you see is also on the supply list, that they can just put it out of their binder into the folder. But the binder is something we're going to be using as a resource for our students to not need to have to be handed materials at the beginning of every class, or need to get up to get materials off of a counter. That it will be pre-populated into their binder, and it's there, and the teacher can say, okay, in your binder, you'll see on page 32 that covers factoring. I want everyone to turn to that. And then it's not getting it passed to them from the kid in front of them or going to the counter. It's there and pre-populated for them. So that is important. In the past, we've been able to have classroom sets of calculators that could be shared. This does pose some cross-contamination concerns. So we are not going to be doing that this year. I would implore you to look into a 4-function calculator for your son or daughter if you can get one, or if you have one. If that's a financial constraint, you can reach out to your math teacher very early on in the year, and we will have options for you to have one, but it would be one that you would almost borrow or lease from us for that time that we're not going to collect every day. It's going to be yours to keep at that point. Pencil kits. I said this before in terms of having the students' resources there with them. I think it's going to be a really good idea for a lot of our kids to have a decent sized pencil kit, or kit that they can keep pencils in, pens, pencil sharpener, so they don't have to get up a little pencil sharpener that's not a safety risk. Pens, markers, things like that would be a kit, or that could be kept by their desk, that they don't need to bring home every day, that they don't need to take home with them every night, and that our teachers don't have to worry about distributing those type of items there in that kit. So I would think about that. We talked about folders. Obviously, we talked a lot about face coverings and masks. That's going to be important. Mr. Burns and I, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we'll go over on the first day what the CDC guidance is in terms of the appropriate, effective way of wearing a mask. And that's going to be very important. If we're doing face coverings, we want to do it correctly. And again, later this month, our teachers will have more specifics to what they might need for their subjects that we will publicize and get out to you. But these few items are things that right now, for early August, as a parent, if your son or daughter is coming here in the fall, I would start looking into, because it's a safe bet that they would be needed. Busing and transportation, I know that in our school district safety plan, which I would implore you to read if you haven't, that students would be masked on the bus, 2 seats and 2 students to a seat. I think that the arrival and departures will probably be a little bit more spread out in the past to accommodate for what we need. But again, that's in the safety plan. And if you have questions on it, please ask me. I will answer them to the best of the ability I can. But we obviously will still have busing and transportation options for parents. It will be a little bit different, but more or less it will be more safety protocols for your son or daughter. Again, I think there's some situations we really want to avoid. I know I know you as a parent wouldn't want to see a student who's waiting at the bus stop or waiting outside their house to get on a bus and they don't have their face covering. That puts the bus driver in a little bit of a difficult position. So I said at the beginning, we're asking a lot of parents and flexibility and patience. That is one thing to keep in mind, that you don't want to have a bus driver tell a child not to get on the bus because they don't have a face covering, or vice versa, let them on the bus without one. It creates a challenge. So that face covering is, if you're taking the bus, is important right from the get-go in the morning. I hope we have a lot of our 6th grade students with us, our incoming 6th grade students. Typically this time of year, you start to hear some information with us regarding our 6th grade orientation. I will say it's a very important event for us. I will not say that it's not. I think it helps with a lot of the students' anxiety of coming into a new building. But when reflecting on this event, a majority of the time is spent on 3 things at this event. The first item that students want to do immediately is they want to get used to how to use their lockers. That's why they come to orientation. That's the big thing for our 6th grade students. That's not a priority this year because students won't have lockers. So that takes one of the items off the sixth grade orientation that for the beginning of the year, we don't have to worry about necessarily. Second thing that students like to do is they like to get their physical schedule, look at who their teachers are, and go see where their teachers' classrooms are. If you're coming in the fall, I explained that the schedule will be different. Students don't really have specific schedules. The classroom that they're assigned has a cohort schedule, which you will know, but there's no real need of reading a schedule for a sixth grader. They just really need to know what classroom to go in. And on the first day, we will make sure of that. And then the third thing that happens on that day, which is my favorite part, and I know a lot of the students, is the ice cream part of it. We have an ice cream social. And as much as I love ice cream parties, we're at a point where we don't feel that doing a full sixth grade orientation is necessary. However, Mrs. Murray, our guidance counselor, already through the end of last year, put together a lot of really good information for fifth graders in terms of what things will be like in sixth grade that we will share out again for them to look at. We will also share out just general information for our sixth grade students so they know what to expect the first day. And leading to my next point, the other really important event for our sixth grade students that are coming, and really all our students, is our first day, Mr. Burns and I always have an opening assembly. We will not have a large congregation of assembly bringing our whole student body together, but all of those protocols that we go over on that first day, from dress code to treating each other with respect, to protocols in the cafeteria, to extracurriculars, everything we go over, we will still do that morning. We will just be doing it virtually from a TV studio in our building, and students will be in their homerooms and watching us on TV, and we'll avoid the large congregation. So our sixth graders who are listening, it's a new school, regardless of if we're in a pandemic or not, and we understand the challenges of that. But know that over the next month, we will share resources virtually for you that I hope you take the time to look at. And on your first day, we will go over a lot of information that hopefully will make you feel better about what our protocols are. Before I move on to some of my conclusion stuff, and we take questions, I know a lot of questions are scenario and hypothetical based, and if they're asked, there's no problem. We will discuss them and ask them. But I know one that comes up that's on a lot of people's mind is, what if a student tests positive, or what if a teacher tests positive? What happens in that scenario? And I want to get out in front of this a little bit to tell you how I envision if that happened here, and I hope it doesn't, but if it did, how that would play out. I would not be making a decision on a school closing or a classroom closing or a group of kids quarantining, nor would Mr. Frigoletto, our superintendent, Mr. Burns. What we would do is, if that became aware to us, or we were aware of that, the first thing we do is consult with the health officials and health experts. I would share with the health experts exactly what it looks like for that kid when they were in our building from 8 to 3, where they were, what cohort they're in, what classroom they're in, what teachers are in there, what it looks like while they're in there, where they eat lunch, all those details. And then really the next steps on that are case-by-case scenario and deeply contingent on what health officials say. Health officials may say, well, that whole cohort of kids needs a quarantine for 14 days. If they do, we obviously relay that information. Health officials may say, that close this down, or we feel that the kid was not exposed because there was mask on or 6 feet distance. Again, that is in consultation with health officials, which I'm not an expert on, nor is our administration, but we are in as close a contact as we've ever been and will maintain. And they know of what our school safety plan is. They've been part of developing it, and they will be very active in how this plays out when we come to school. And I feel lucky that we have that. Wayne Memorial, which is in our backyard, is a great resource for us. In fact, they have put out a great video on schools reopening locally that's on our school website that I would tell you to take a look at. They did a great job with it. And they are going to be a big resource for us and all of you throughout all of this, as they have been for us behind the scenes for a great deal of time now. Before I take questions, just real quick, so you know what the next steps are for you as parents and students, and this is what's most important. I hope tonight you heard the specifics of what the 3 options entail. That is the virtual campus, the Wayne Highlands Live, where you are still are Wayne Highlands Middle School student with our Wayne Highlands Middle School instructors, you're just participating through a device at home, or our traditional coming to our school and being here with us physically with rigorous safety protocols. Again, this will be recorded. You could review back and look at what those protocols might be. You could review our school district safety plan on our website. And as you see at the bottom, you can contact me at any time. You may have questions that you may not want to ask at this time that you might want to reach out tomorrow or shoot me an email. Please take a picture of my contact information now, write it down. I will be more than accessible to answer any questions I can for you as you weigh what the 3 options are in making your decision. So, the next thing you need to do is weigh those options with your family, talk to your children. It's at the age of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They are, I believe, mature enough to be part of those conversations. And you as a family can come up to one of the 3 options you feel is best for your family. And then starting tomorrow, it'll be open for a few days, so you do have a little bit of time. You will be given an online survey from our district, which they will release, and you will declare option 1, 2, or 3. My son or daughter is going to come back to 5 days a week in person. My son or daughter is going to do the Wayne Highlands Live, the synchronous/asynchronous option, or my son or daughter is going to do the virtual campus. Just keep in mind, if you're choosing the virtual campus, that does require a registration where you would need to contact us in the office and we would register us. The other next steps I would strongly advise you to do right now is immediately make sure you are in tune with our school website and our social media pages. And also we have a one-call system that I hope you're signed up for as a district. But and if you're not, you can sign up on our website. Those will be our main methods of communication. That will be where we put our supplies list in the coming weeks. That will be where I will release homeroom list and what classroom your son or daughter is assigned to. That will be where we put details as to where students report when they come in the morning. Those, if you can please like our pages so you know they're there. If you're on social media, get on our website as frequently as you can. And we will send reminders and one-calls about checking that stuff frequently. But that would be a next step that I think would make a lot of sense to do at this time. I think I've gotten through all the information I wanted to make sure you know. At this time, I'm going to take Q&A, a question and answer period. I don't want to say any questions are off limits, but I would ask for confidentiality reasons. If you have a specific question that really just pertains to your son or daughter, it's probably best to email or contact me privately about that. Really this format, what's best is like general questions. I did my best to try to cover every aspect of this I could in the past hour. But I know that there's probably still unanswered questions that generally are out there, and I will do my best to answer them. I think the best way to do this would be for you to type them into the chat. There is a chat option on the Zoom that you can submit your question. And if you can't type in the chat, you can unmute yourself to ask your question. We do have quite a few participants, so I would ask that you just be cognizant of that, and I may need to pick someone to go first if we got 2 people speaking at once. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can see the chat room. I may reshare it depending on questions, but let's take some questions and see where we're at. I see we got some things in the questions here. Do you have an end date for the first quarter? Off the top of my head, I don't. To be completely honest, I know it's on our school calendar that's been approved.
Did I? No.
It would be 45 days.
No, probably not.
It would be 45 days from the September 8th, 45 student days. September 8th is a Tuesday. So that would be the case. I don't know that date off the top of my head. I apologize. Is there no band and chorus? This is a really good question, and thank you so much for asking this, because I meant to cover this and I didn't. One of our special area classes is general music that will be taught in these classrooms. So no, there will not be a scheduled band or chorus with students. They will not have the option to sign up for band or chorus as they have. That's for quite a few reasons, to be honest. One is safety reasons, the projecting of voices, the using your mouth for instruments presents some challenges with that. There's some scheduling reasons with that. However, in conversation with our general music teachers, which every student will have a general music class, they do feel that because there'll be some options in terms of two teachers in there at different times, that they may be able to do more specific and make it maybe a bit more individualized than if it's just generally 25 kids. But there will be no band or chorus as it's typically scheduled. For water bottles, will there be a way to refill them during the day? Great question. We're fortunate at our school, we have a refill station, which is touchless, which is what we want right now. So as we typically have, students can bring in plastic water bottles in clear. We don't want them glass or not clear for other reasons. And we have a touchless water fill station in the cafeteria that we will be able to allow them to use to refill them. And that would be great, especially with students being stationary in one class, them having a water bottle with them. It's a really good thing for them to have. So one other protocol I want to talk about real quick as I talk about the water bottle station. If we have students who ask to go to the lab, it creates some challenges because we don't want 6 students in the lab at once. Again, that would be time where we'd require them to being masked or face coverings. We are going to set up a system that our staff can virtually track when a student signs out to go somewhere out of the room. So that way, if a teacher's in a classroom and a student asks, can I go to the lab? They can look to say, right now is not a good time. We have 3 students in there. Once there's less students in there, I would like you to go when it's a little bit more safer. And that would be the same with the water bottle refill station. Our cohort's going to be organized based off reading and math levels. That's another great question. The cohorts that are being built mainly are being built off math levels or math classes because of that is the one class that in each grade level, we have different course options in math. So that is one option. That is one of the big priorities with it. Reading levels will be part of those conversations as well, especially for students who may need more support with reading at times. And that is being taken into consideration as we build them. And we will be accommodating for that as best we can with that. For option 2, does the school supply a computer for the student? Again, option 2 is our Wayne Highlands Live option. Similar to what we had from March to June, we cannot, or we can't say anybody who signs up for option 2, hey, here's an iPad or a device to do this. However, if you do not have one and you've discussed that with us, similar to the folks that we've had from March through June, we would be able to provide you with one. So you do have that. So if you don't have one at home, if you have one at home, it's easier and it's a better help and resource if you have one at home to use that. But if not, we will provide one, and you could reach out to us to talk about that. How do students hand in their homework or assessments if they choose option 2? Again, option 2 is the Wayne Highlands Live synchronous option. That would all be submitted through Google Classroom. The recording of the teacher doing the lesson in the instructional part would be conducted through Zoom. And just like students did when they were remote learning in March through June, they submitted stuff through Google Classroom, and that's how they would do it in option 2 this time. So that's how that would be submitted. Are middle school students getting iPads? Again, if you're option 2 and you're in need of one, you don't have any options at home for devices, we will be able to accommodate that. I can't sit here and tell you right now that every student that walks in our door in the fall will have iPads in terms of like a 1-to-1 ratio. We're working through plans right now to make sure we have a strong access for our kids to technology, our kids that are here, our kids that come in the fall. Again, I can't say that it will be a 1-to-1 initiative, but I could tell you that we are working very diligently to make sure that we will have options such as iPad carts and sets that could be used in classrooms at different times and disinfected when after being used and done safely. So that would answer that question. If we go to the red phase, will the school provide a computer iPad? Yeah, I think the question is, if we decided that our whole district was going to remote learning, whether we decide it or the state decided it. That would be what it would be similar to what we had from March through June for everybody. And again, similar to option 2, if a device is a concern or a problem for you, our technology department could work with you to help with that. We will not, can't say that everyone, hey, here's an iPad, you have it. We obviously, if you have one at home, would implore you to use that. But if that's a problem that you don't have a device, we can help. If we go fully remote. If we choose, next question, if we choose option 1, can we switch to option 2? So the ability for you to switch will be mainly on a marking period basis. So when you declare later this week, you're declaring for the first marking period. We will then have you redeclare at the end of the first marking period. So if you choose option 1, and things change for you as you go through, as your son or daughter comes here, and you decide option 2, it would be after the end of the first marking period. So that declaration is for a marking period at a time, and then you can make switches from there. And either way you go, whether you want to go, if you choose option 1, then want to go option 2, or option 2, then to option 1. How would phys ed be handled for kids choosing option 2? It's a challenge. It's a challenge. It would be similar to what our teachers for phys ed did in March and June with remote learning. They would give more physical activities that students can do at home on their own time, and students can show evidence of their participation in doing those. And I will say, like, that kind of sounds like, oh, what, do you just have tell my son to go walk around the yard for a little bit? I get how that sounds. However, I will say Miss McDermott and Mr. Gillo, if you saw or you were paying attention to some of the things they did remotely in the spring, they are very creative in terms of maintaining phys ed from a remote standpoint, and I think we're fortunate for that. Yeah, what will be the protocol for a staff member or student awaiting a test result if they got a COVID test? So hypothetically, if one of our teachers needed to go get a COVID test, or a student needed to get a COVID test that we are aware of, again, every case is different depending on where the student was, who they've been in contact with. And when I say where they've been in contact with, I think you guys know in society right now, our staff and our school can be really helpful to health officials and parents to tell you in our plan who the student has been in contact with in school. But that ends at 3 o'clock. What those kids do, or what you may permit your son or daughter to do from 3 to 8 o'clock, can change a lot of that stuff. And that is all information that health officials would take into account at that point. So if someone was awaiting a test result, again, it would be in consultation with our health officials, and they may be asked to stay home or quarantine, or people they may have been in contact with may be asked that too. But again, it's a situation in a case-by-case basis that goes through our health officials and our health experts. Are students in Zoom school option 2 able to attend extracurricular activities? Are some activities going to also be able to be virtually? Yeah, as long as you're a Wayne Highlands student, you have access to our extracurricular activities. I would ask you, if you're exploring option 2, I would think you're mainly exploring option 2 for safety reasons, that you feel it's safer for your son or daughter to be at home. And then if they explore an extracurricular activity such as athletics, I'm sure you have those same questions that you need to weigh. I'm not going to sit here and make a judgment as to whether our school is safer than a kid participating in a sport after school. I can't do that. But I would say that they will, as long as they're our student, they have access to our extracurricular activities. I will tell you, ours would be limited in terms of the middle school. Right now, field trips and things like that are put on hold for obvious reasons. We're reducing travel and where places people go. I think the main extracurricular activity is athletics, that junior high sports has been approved to start within a schedule, within safety protocols when their coaches submit them. And yes, students would have access to those in those options. Please confirm that we can definitely opt into option 2 for first quarter, but then transition into the class for second quarter, or vice versa. Yes, you will have at the end of the marking period the option to make your decisions each marking period. As I know as well as you know that in the COVID world, things change rapidly. Things will change between now and the start of the school year. So you may start as a parent thinking option 2 is a better, safer option for your student, but by the end of the first marking period, you may feel option 1 is safe now, and you will have that opportunity to do that. So each marking period will have this declaration process again. It's not going to be something you can shift week to week, but it is a marking period to marking period thing. So yes, for the person who asked that, you will have that opportunity to do that. How will children perform testing if they do option 2? Again, all assessments and resources and assignments for option 2 would be through our Google Classroom. Whether it's a test, a worksheet, a quiz, a project, that would be posted through Google Classroom, and our teachers will assess it that way. If you're referring to state testing, we will, closer to the spring, depending on circumstances, have a protocol or plan for our students to participate in state testing if the state deems that they even are doing testing. But that's pretty far down the road, and we will have some time to plan that. But in-class assessments and things like that for option 2 will be posted, submitted, and analyzed through the Google Classroom platform. Can students split between in-school instruction and the live option? For example, can they come to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then do Tuesday and Thursday online? Unfortunately, that is not part of our plan at this time. When you make a declaration, it would be for them to come fully for the 5 days, or to do the Wayne Highlands Live or virtual online for that time. We'll give you flexibility at the end of the marking period that we can, but yeah, that would not be an option. Will band be held this year? I mentioned this before. Band will not be held in the traditional format it is in, but in conversations with Mr. Hopkins, I do think he will be able to be I don't want to say more individualized, but maybe more specific, advanced music stuff with certain groups within the schedule that he can accomplish that creatively. But no, we will not have a band room. We will not have a band class, so to speak. And again, I explained a few of those reasons why before. If you choose option 2 or 3, can you still participate in sports? And we talked about that a little bit before, and the answer is yes. If we plan on option 1, can we go to option 2 if our child is ill? Like any situation, whether we're in a pandemic or not, if a student was to become ill and it's rather serious in nature, we have options to maintain education throughout that. I think the situation of a student falling ill and a doctor saying that would change that a little bit. If we really had a student who was ill, and it's better for them to be at home, we can be flexible in that scenario in consultation with you and your doctor to say, okay, maybe it's best to have them transition to option 2. And that would have some flexibility in that instance that a student might fall ill. Will attendance be different if a child gets a cold or other illness that they should not be in school? Just generally on attendance. So people have asked how attendance will be on option 2, because students will have an opportunity to not actually have to be live within the lesson. They can watch the recording of it. So their attendance would be based off their work completion and participating in the Google Classroom to that level that they can. Our attendance for in-school will be very similar to what it is. Again, doctor's notes are basically the highest level that we don't really punish students for, or don't consider them unexcused or anything like that. So if it's cold or illness that happens, it would be very similar that, we want them to stay home. We know attendance is going to be different this year than other years because we want people to take extra precautions. But again, we're not going to file truancy off the get-go from a student who has to stay home because of a cold or an illness. We'll obviously be in consultation with you on that, and you explain that to us just like you would under normal circumstances, what's going on, and we'll be considerate of that. Again, another question on district providing iPads to students for online options. If it's a need for you and it's a documented need for you that you don't have another option at home, our preference is for you to use the ones at home, but we can accommodate for online options if they don't. The virtual campus is separate. You would get a device provided by VLN at that time that would be there for you. So again, if it's a need, we can work through that for you. If not, we would ask you to use your device that you have capabilities for you that can be done on that. For option 2, how does a student ask questions and do paper/school work during the class time? Again, with the Wayne Highlands Live, which is option 2, students can ask questions live if they are participating live. Teachers will have some protocols that will say, okay, all right, now, do you have a question at home online? A student may, there's an option for raising your hand in a Zoom that the teacher can then call on the student even in the Zoom when they're looking at it. They might speak up if it's appropriate with the teacher at that time, but they will be able to interact with the teacher if they are there at the time that it's live. If that's not a possibility and they do it recorded, the best way to interact with the teachers would then be to message them on Google Classrooms, to ask follow-up questions, to email if needed, and be cognizant that, that might happen in the evening. Our teachers might need a little bit more time to get back to you, but they will be able to interact with you and answer those for you. In terms of doing the paper and schoolwork, again, that will be done through Google Classroom as it was done remotely in the past. Assignments would be posted there. Students can do them and then submit them through that option. If students were to break a mask, would they have access to a new one? That's a good question, and yes, we will be prepared that, God, if a student forgets a mask or a student has one broken or breaks on them, or we see a student who's wearing a mask that we frankly feel is not an effective one, we will provide them with one. We don't want to make it a daily habit because we're limited on how many we have of those, but, we will have that as an option. Good message here from a parent. Health and safety reasons, parents should err on the side of caution if a student's not feeling well. 100%. We agree with you on that. How will this affect the max number of days to miss without getting in trouble? Again, to start the year, we'll have our process as we normally do, but we're going to be very cognizant of that and cognizant of the situation of where they're at. We agree. We want students, if they're not feeling well, to go stay home and not push it. Our staff doesn't want that. We don't want that. So, we still have guidance that we follow for attendance from the state, but we will be very cognizant of that. And if you're keeping your son or daughter home because you feel they're sick, we don't want you in the back of your head right now to be thinking, are they going to get in trouble? That's not where we are going to be at a starting point. Now, have we had situations in the past where sometimes some things get abused or, attendance becomes an issue? Yeah, but it's not going to be from the get-go, and, that all comes in collaboration with you, and getting in trouble will not be at the top of the list of what you should worry about. Keeping your son safe and truthfully keeping our other students and staff safe is top priority. Just to be clear, masks are not optional for any reason, not even medical, correct? If there's truly a medical reason for a mask, I believe there's literature in this in our safety plan. I think that if that's the problem or that's the concern, we would implore you to look at options 2 or 3. That if the mask is not capable of being done, because one student not following a mask protocol could jeopardize, really the whole plan. So if you have a specific situation you would like to talk to me about privately about that, please reach out. If you choose the traditional model, you stay home for a day and can join the virtual class. Most likely, I can't guarantee that because of device concerns. The teachers will not be able to necessarily have that virtual link for them to participate. Can they access Google Classroom if they have a device and maybe see some of the assignments? Sure. I don't see a problem with that, and I don't think our teachers would have any problem with that, but the actual participating live during it would be more of a challenge. but I think accessing some of the resources may not be as much of a problem. Yeah, option 2, again, a lot of questions on option 2, which is really good. Will there be additional assistance offered to students that have questions and need additional help when they get behind? Yeah, our goal with option 2 is to make it as close to a real in-school experience as possible. And when our students need assistance in school and they need help in school, we want to be there for them to help with them. And option 2, I think, will give us opportunities to do that. And if the student's participating in that option, our teachers will be able to gauge. All right, I think one of the students that's on the synchronous option is struggling a bit with this concept. Maybe I need to touch base with them privately. Maybe I need to provide them a separate resource through Google Classroom to help. But yes, we will stay on top of that just like we would for our own students. Is there going to be any organized effort from the PTA or something else to let community know how we might support students and families? You know, I think our PTA does a great job of supporting our students and families. I don't know if you mean anything specifically, but students who are families who are in needs, we might not publicize them as often as we need to. We do have a great deal of resources, including the PTA. But as we say to our students from day one, if you have a need, physical or mental, we want to help with that and communicate that with us, and we will help. And maybe we use a resource we have in the school. Maybe we look into resources outside the school. But if there's any need, physical or mental, we want to help, and we will. If we have several students in the same grade, can one student do Wayne Highlands Live and the other in person? Yes. Yes. If you have 2 students in 7th grade or 6th grade, one can do online, one can do the Wayne Highlands Live, and the other could do in person. You would just declare that for us when you do your declaration. And then the other question is, can they be in the same room for easy interaction between them at home? Yes, we can accommodate those requests for the most part. If you have 2, twins or 2 students that are in two students from your household that are in the same grade. Now, I will say we often have times siblings that are in the same grade. We often have times where parents request, can they not be in the same group? And I understand those reasonings as well. But if you have specific requests such as that, email me or myself or Mrs. Murray, and we will look into accommodating them as best I can. Before I move on to these questions, and I promise I'm going to answer all of them, I just want to let everyone know, I know the high school has their presentation now at 7:30. I'm going to answer every question that gets typed in this chat right now, but I understand if you need to sign out. And if you do, know that my answers to these questions will be recorded. You can come back and view them at any time. And you have my contact information to contact me at any time you like. And if you do have to leave, have a good night and know how much I appreciate you joining us. And I look forward to keeping in close collaboration with you.